I've never traveled by water. But sometime in 2014, I had to get into a boat headed for a community to confirm a story. A breaking story at the time. The story said that there had been an explosion at an office of a political party, and that there was a fire in the building as a result of this explosion. You know, the normal thing, you get the stories all the time, and the normal thing is for you to quickly call the spokesperson of the political party and get the narrative basically from them. But there are some media houses that don't take that as a story. For them, it's a scoop. A scoop is like you have an idea that something is going on, and then you pursue to own your story. So that was the place I found myself that day, and that was why I got into a boat to go confirm the story. As I approached the community, I remember wondering if I was in the right community because there was nothing that looked like there had been an attack. It looked like normal activities were still going on. I saw fishermen throwing nets into the water and women carrying a couple of baskets. And I was wondering, I remember asking people in the speedboat with me if this was this community. And they said, yes, it was. I said, okay. We got to the jetty, I got down. I made inquiries and I found the building that was supposed to be on fire. I remember standing there and I was wondering why the story came out in the first place. Because there was nothing like that. I was standing in an abandoned building, which was, yes, it had been given to that political party, but they hadn't started using it at the time. It was an abandoned building, all dusty. And so I took my pictures and I got back to my office. And I thought about, for me, it was I like to use that as the first time that the reality of what fake news is and could be, especially during elections. I like to use that as my first reality of what even communication, information sharing had become. Because I'm talking about a story that national dailies carried it. And it was also coming at a time where there was a lot of stories of the narrative of political parties being victimized and all of that. So they are going to add this story to all that narrative, even when it wasn't true. And that concerned me. And so I connected it all the way to events I saw happen in 2011. And it dawned on me that fake news really runs elections in Africa. And now, globally, fake news runs elections. Fake news. It was named 2017's Word of the Year. Thanks to, you guessed right, US President Donald Trump. It was his favorite phrase. But then that's also the reason why we need to begin to think about the responsibility we must allow ourselves to bear if we do not want fake news to run elections in Nigeria. There's been a couple of definitions of what fake news is. We all have our different definitions. But I particularly like the way the BBC defined fake news. They said it's false information deliberately circulated by those who have scant regard for the truth, but hope to advance particular, often extreme political causes and make money out of online traffic. I'm going to come back to the online traffic part. But I also like another definition that they also gave. They said it's false information circulated by journalists who don't realize it's false. And that was the situation in that 2014 story. As I'm talking to you, a lot of journalists carried that story and they still didn't know that that story was false. In fact, the spokesperson that they were calling was not near that community. So how did he know that there was a fire and that it was raging as he was telling them? And all the other conversations that arose as a result of that story. I hope to awaken in you the need for us to allow ourselves become media literate enough that we sieve and filter messages that go by you every day, in whatever form. Billboards, magazines, newspapers, your social media, your phone, whatever platform, WhatsApp, oh God. All those messages that you allow yourself sieve and filter it. Because there are dangers of spreading fake news, especially during elections, as well we just find ourselves next year, elections in Nigeria. So I tried to look for the history of fake news. How did it start? Where did it all come? And what's happening? And I realized that it's always been there. We've always had fake news. They said it spans back to centuries. The times of the Roman Empire. A certain Octavian, the first emperor of the Roman Empire. You see that picture there? He put out that picture of himself and used a lot of disinformation during his reign. And he was able to conquer Mark Antony at the time. And even in his old age, this was the image people had of him. And even till now, that's all we know of Octavian, the first emperor of the Roman Empire. But people that knew better know that this is fake, of who he really was. And what happened, we've seen a lot of movies as well, of what happened during the time of Octavian. We can take it all the way down to Nigeria as to when it really started, when we've always had fake news. Even far back as 1989, the anti-SAP riots, which we know happened both in Benin and Lagos, although some of us weren't born, but we are aware and we read that over 22 people were killed because of a fake story regarding anti-SAP riots. We also can trace it back to 2011 election, where we start having the reality of, mass communication, other forms of mass communication coming up. We can trace it back to those times as well. Even to 2015 elections, we can trace them all back to how they all crept into elections, where we saw spin doctors. They are called spin doctors because they spin stories in an amazing way that even journalists can't comprehend. So they call you up and they say, I can categorically tell you, as I am standing here right now. And then when you try to do just an extra research, you will be shocked and amazed at the level of falsehood that accompanies such a story. Of course, when the President Muhammadu Buhari had gone on his leave, I'm talking about last year, let's even leave what happened this year, but we all know what happened when he traveled. A lot of fake news about his death that was never true. I remember reading a particular article, and they were so sure, the hospital and the process that had gone on to protect what they said was the real truth, which is the fact that he was no more. But that was not true. He came back finally, hale and happy. I remember a lot of people got confused because there were so many stories flying around, and we weren't sure anymore if we were about to have another death of a president in our country or not. But then, there are two reasons why fake news thrives. Two. If you said influence and revenue, you're correct. The people we call spin doctors, they go on Facebook And a lot of fake posts and fake narratives are put out there. And they create Facebook pages for this as well. And so you can have 100 people following the Facebook pages. But that's not the sad news. The sad news is that when you put the fake post on a Facebook page and the 100 followers share it to their various platforms, and this fake post generates discussions, reactions, comments, discussing fake posts, remember. So at the end of the day, it's lost in such a way that people are having arguments in their office and their classrooms about something that never happened. And so if you ask the question like, okay, I want to do a story about this and they've been talking about, let's trace it to where did it even start? And if you want to trace it all the way, it goes back to a post. And it's so shabby, but because it was shared severally, somehow people attached importance to it. So that's where we have names like E-rats. So politicians carry people they call E-rats and social media influencers because those are the people that make it happen for them on social media. So the discussion can go on and can go on really well when you have the social media influencers involved talking on fake posts. Of course, the Twitter fight, how can I forget? We also have the issue of revenue, where there's need for them to make money. So this one, the category is so terrible that the only concern is for it to go viral. So they can pick up anything just for those lines to go up. So they can write anything. Obasanjo slaps IBB. IBB slaps, just stories that you can't even fathom, just so that your attention will be like, huh? And then you can click, and the online traffic can perhaps bring in the money. But they forget to think about the dangers of the stories that are cooked up. They forget to think about what it could do to our elections, to our electorate, which is what brings me to what could happen if we keep allowing fake news to thrive during elections. There's one thing that I have noticed in covering elections in Nigeria. There's always low voter turnout. Conversations about voter turnout has gone on and on again. But one thing I've also seen in the field is that voter turnout will further nosedive if we keep allowing fake news to thrive. If you look at the graph there, in 1999, we had 52% voter turnout. 2003 had 69%. 2007, 57%. 2011, 54%. The last election had 44%. It's dropping. And while we have so many factors why this could be dropping, there's one of it, which is what I'm talking about right now, fake news. So I remember being in a community in 2015. It was called one of the volatile areas of my area of coverage. It was picked as one of the volatile areas. And I picked interest that I'm going to cover my own election there. And I remember going there. And I couldn't find the residents at the polling units. And so I decided to go to the streets and go meet them in their houses and try to understand why they won't come out for elections. And I remember a woman telling me, Abego, they told us so, that there was a town crier that went around the community to warn them to stay safe. And the best way to stay safe is to stay in your houses. But there was nothing happening. Like I said, I went to the community. It was supposed to be the volatile area. We got there, the streets were dry. There was nothing happening. It was, the INEC officials were there. They were ready to serve. But there was nothing. There was very few people. I remember 1, 2. But they were told And that got me thinking about that incident of my boat ride, which is to create some sort of controversy and get the people in the area to be worried about their safety to the extent that they don't come out to vote during elections. Are we beginning to see the role fake news plays? But that's not just all that can happen if we continue to allow fake news to run elections. There's going to be the same vicious cycle that we argue about on Twitter. The same vicious cycle. We're going to have more and more power being left in the hands of politicians rather than in the hands of the citizens. And the poor can continue to get poorer, and the richer could get the better for it. There will be less faith in the system for the masses. Human rights abuse could worsen. Laws will protect only the strong while the weak withers. Grassroots development projects will just become personal projects. Can we just connect the dots with me? Because that's like, is that not like what we're already seeing? But fake news could even worsen the situation if we don't do something about it. So that brings me to the antidote. What can we do about fake news? What can we do to not allow fake news thrive during elections? You can refute stories, just like I did in 2014 after I got that story. I didn't just go back to my office. I walked to the political party secretariat at the time, and I met the spokesperson, and I showed him the pictures that I had gotten from the scene, supposed scene. And I'm going to try my best not to go further into the details of what I was told or what happened after that. But that changed the story of a certain journalist who was there at the time, sitting down and was getting more feedbacks from a man that never went to the community. So he suddenly stopped talking to the spokesperson and turned to me and started asking me what I saw. And there's nothing as powerful as what you saw, you know that. Another important antidote is the anti-fake news law. Whenever we talk about laws, certain people shudder. But we need anti-fake news laws. If France is already doing it, if a community like Facebook, which you can no longer ignore, has taken it seriously, we really need to start thinking about anti-fake news laws. We need laws that can help protect and guide you and put out the right information to citizens. And I can also talk about media literacy. Media literacy allows you, it's you allowing yourself to understand how the media works, how information sharing works, how communication sharing works. And I see it as one solution that anyone can be a part of. You allow yourself to understand the process of information sharing, how the people in presidency, people in governance, actually get their information and how they put it out there, and why they speak the language that they speak and why they use the language and the words that they use. Allowing yourself to be that media literate could help fight fake news. So here's my phantom idea. I've started a platform, an online platform, where all of us can be a part of, including journalists. So you have a question, you put it on the platform, and journalists can pick those questions and track the answers using what we call social solution journalism approach. If we can begin to do that, asking questions, and journalists imbibing the solution journalism approach, it means that we will have more of right information in our public spaces, and we can all argue better when it comes to fake news. So I'm going to say, don't sit pretty anymore. Fight fake news. Become responsible enough to do that. And you could just do more than save yourself. You could save your country. You could save your country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Chioma.